Hi, I'm Angela Truscott, founder of Take Two. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which this interview has been produced and where today's guest, Hannah Gartside, also creates and resides. We pay our deepest respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people listening today. What if the very clothes you once wore, the fabric that touched your skin, soaked up your memories and held your story, could be reborn into something entirely new? What if discarded dresses, forgotten gloves and old ballet costumes weren't just materials, but portals into something deeper? Emotion, history, transformation. For artist Hannah Gartside, fabric is never just fabric. It holds energy, stories, and the possibility of becoming something more. And in her hands, textiles don't just sit still, they move, breathe, and even dance. Hannah is an artist who works with worn and discarded textiles, transforming them into sculptural works that pulse with longing, tenderness, and power. From kinetic fabric installations that swirl and swift, to her latest series, Bunnies in Love, Lust and Longing, where second-hand leather gloves become small emotive sculptures, her work asks us to rethink textiles as vessels of memory and sensation. Hannah trained in fashion and costume design before transitioning into sculpture. Her background in theatre and ballet deeply informs how she brings movement and emotion to fibre art. She's been recognised internationally, receiving the Richard Parker Award at the Melbourne Art Fair, the Willara Small Sculpture Prize, and an Anne and Gordon Samstag International Visual Arts Scholarship to pursue her MFA in Europe. Her work is feminist, deeply personal, and rich with the history of women and materials she brings to life. And in today's conversation, we'll explore the power of textiles to hold memory and emotion, her journey from costume design to kinetic sculpture, how she navigates the art world, gallery representation, pricing and ambition, why she sees her art as a calling and not just a profession, and how pleasure, transformation and feminism weave through her work. One of the things I love most about the fibre art and mixed media community is their passion for connecting and sharing. If you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe and share it with someone in your circle, a fellow artist, a friend who loves textiles, or anyone who would be inspired by Hannah's journey. Hannah is our 162nd Friday feature artist, and you can revisit all the interviews through our website at fiberartstake2.com. And she is officially our 7th podcast, and I'm so excited to bring you this conversation. Let's dive in. Hi, Hannah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Angela. What a beautiful video.
Oh, you made it so easy. Your work is divine. I can't believe, I'm very, very, very honoured to be speaking to you. And I can't wait to share your work and your philosophies with our audience. And also you're a fellow Melbourneite like myself. So close.
So close. Yeah. So lovely to be here with you all.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Hannah, you're our 162nd Friday feature artist, which is quite exciting, and our 7th official podcast. We've just launched a podcast, so we're going to have people be watching this interview and also listening. So we'll do a bit of descriptive work of your artwork, which I find actually quite a fascinating process to actually talk about your work as if no one's seen it before. So I was going to ask, how would you describe your work to someone who has never seen it before?
I've thought about this, and I don't want to do this as a cop-out answer, but really I would describe it in feelings. So, that's the reason why it's a visual medium. That is the language. The language is the material and the form and everything. But in terms of the feelings that it generates in me and what I know of conversations with viewers is this kind of feeling of surprise, curiosity and surprise, and then maybe delight or wonder or elation. You know, it's a bit of a jolt, so different, unexpected. Sometimes a feeling of peace, because I put so much care into the crafting of it, I suppose, like the finessing of the actual materials. So I think there's a feeling of peace. Here is a place where things are cared for appropriately. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And there's an honoring, isn't there, in your work? Like, and we'll get to see more of it and hear more of the stories around it, but honoring the past life of the fabric and maybe the owners of the fabric.
Maybe the what, sorry?
The past owners, you know, the humans that embody maybe some of, because you work in a lot of garments. Yeah. And it was funny, like when you said feeling as well, I instantly went to tactile feeling. Because I always think of fiber art as being something that you can touch and you can hold. And
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's a great term in the fashion industry, and it's the word memory, but in that context it means what stays in the cloth. So it's like the wrinkles or the sweat stains, or and I love that we think of memory as this intangible thing that happens in your imagination, but then in textiles it's so literal. And yeah. Have you heard that before? The memory?
yes.
Yeah. I
Memory.
really like that, and I think that is very significant in what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, definitely. What was your very first memory of making something with your hands?
Well, I have photographic evidence of, we used to do these fashion parades. My grandma lived with us when we moved to Australia from when I was about 6, and she taught me to sew on her Singer when I was 7. And we would make these clothes for me and my little sisters and wear her jewelry, and do these fashion parades down her, like in her living room, basically, with some of the kids from the neighborhood. But I don't literally remember doing that. What I remember is making this doll from a rag doll, like just drawing out the shape of a body and then sewing it. And then the dress was made from my mum's bridesmaid's dress for her sister's wedding, and it was a 1970s English wedding. So all the bridesmaids were in like shades of pink in Liberty Tana lawn. So you know those little flowers that are very dense, and it was kind of between like a hot pink and a musky through to a pale pink. So my princess rag doll had that in a dress with some little like seed pearls on her and wool hair. Yeah, that's the first I remember being very, very, very happy with her.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
And it's also that thing of like, oh, I want this thing, and so I will make it.
Yeah.
Will realize it. Yeah.
How good is that? I think for me, raising my kids as well, like I want them to be able to make things for themselves, and they attend a school that really embraces that as well. Like they make a mud hut and they make beanies and they make their own bags and they make their own, my son's making me a lamp at the moment by carving stone and then eco dyeing. Like it's beautiful to actually have something in your home or as a child that, hey, I made that. It's almost like it gives you self-esteem. It boosts your self-esteem.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but I do think it does mean that you have a different relationship to the material world. Yeah. In terms of like knowing that you have an agency, an ability to, transform things. And
yeah, absolutely. It's so funny you mentioned bridesmaids dresses because it's my 20th wedding anniversary today. And
congratulations.
thank you. Oh, it's funny though, because you pull out the wedding album. I haven't pulled it out in probably 10 years. And I was looking at the bridesmaids' dresses and going, wasn't so bad. They haven't dated too much, but I think everybody says that. They should really be transformed into something else, Hannah.
It's very sweet though.
Yeah, it is sweet. Hannah, you've described your work as a calling rather than a profession. It's devotional rather than like a pressured thing that you have to do. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so what I mean when I say that is like making things for me is just a way of being alive. So it's a much more kind of fundamental experience than a career. It's I think most artists, yeah, it's just how you live. Also, I think of it as devotional in terms of that is how I have my relationship to divinity, is or to my particular idea of love or God. And I really have no interest in organized religion whatsoever, but my relationship to the divine is through my making, and I think that keeps me on the straight and narrow, in terms of like it coming from my heart and it being not very mercenary at all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that, because it goes back to that old adage, the starving artist and things like that. Like, and then I can imagine it would be very difficult when you start becoming successful, and then you start creating work and series of work that people respond to, and you think, oh, I could keep churning these out and make profit and make money. But then is that where your heart lies? And is that where do you know where I'm sort of going with that? Like, there's a devotion to the making and what your heart's calling you to do, but then there's the commercial side and you have to live.
Yeah, but the living comes through the making. The making is first.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think I think about it the way you've framed it at all. And in fact, my commercial gallery, who I love, they've literally said, like, we don't want you to repeat yourself. Like, if make what you're called to make.
Perfect.
So that. I can't speak for other galleries and other relationships, but that obviously really suits me.
Yeah. That's lucky that you found a gallery that honors that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're obviously, like, you're sort of attracted to each other in that way, and it's like a life based on trust and faith, I think. Yeah. And commitment to the work, that is first.
Yes. You've described yourself as a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to your work and practice. Where do you think that stems from?
I think of two things. I think of a respect for the viewer. If I have this opportunity to have my creations in front of other people, that's in fact an honor, and I want to show people how much. Well, it's going back to this thing too. So it's like I don't take that lightly. So I want to, show the respect for the materials, for the making, for the people who, with the time of looking and all of this. So that's really important to me. And then, yeah, I think partly it's to do with the way that I grew up as well. So my mum, she would sort of just, when I showed her something I'd finished, she would kind of just point out what I could have done better. And in fact, it's really double-edged because I feel sad that that happened looking back, because I think it's made it very hard for me to feel proud of myself and celebrate my achievements and stuff, because I just have this relentless drive. Like it never feels quite good enough.
Mm.
And that is like a bit of maybe, I don't know. I haven't got it figured out, so I can't give you like a complete sort of full circle answer. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I would trace it back to that for sure. You know, like even these last bunnies that I made, the ones that I made at the start, by the end, I was like, oh well, they're not right anymore. They're not good enough. I'm going to remake them. But that was also me because I wanted to. So when I'm actually, in fact, in the studio and in the process, that's completely from my heart, and that's between me and God. Um, and that is a place where I feel very, very safe, very comfortable. There's no one else usually around. I do work with others, but I think that that is a very sacred place. Yeah.
Yeah. A place of reverence and yeah.
Well,
Do you,
just
when
where
you're
you're in where I'm in peace. Like,
yeah.
um, sometimes, yeah, no one is. I'm not affected by anyone else, what they're putting on me or saying or their energy or, you know, even if it's a positive thing, like none of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Artists often talk about being in that state of flow, and it's almost like that, like a meditation. When you're making, does time melt away as well?
Sometimes, and sometimes I get really. It makes me feel really happy, like when I finish, like with the bunnies, because that was what I last worked on. When I finished one, like I would just be laughing because I was so delighted. Like, oh, look, like what a surprise! Like you're funny.
Yeah.
There's some that are a bit like, I don't know. They're sort of a bit sexual. Like there's ones that are masturbating each other, and they've got these little fingertip penises and stuff. And I just thought that's so funny because the glove is about touching, and then you've like really got that concentrated in the work. But then sometimes they will make me cry. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a nice way of living. Like it wouldn't suit everyone. You know, my brother-in-law, he's a CFO, and he's like, "What do you do every day?" But I feel the same about him. Like he just looks at numbers. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
just, you know, it's a thing that wouldn't suit everyone, but I'm very lucky that
Yeah.
it gives me a lot of peace.
Yeah. That's who you are. You can't be anyone else or anything else. Yeah.
Nah, and like sometimes I just think, well, someone's got to do it.
Nice.
Like when you get a weird, if it's an opportunity that I feel is a little bit I'm intimidated by or something, I just think it could be me. Like may as well be me. I'm very well placed. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. I noticed in my research that you went live during COVID, and you did, they called it a performance tutorial, I think, where you talked about your art practice and you even showed some techniques and you can look it up online, and it was fabulous. You could tell like that's a big thing to do. I think a lot of us learnt how to move outside of our comfort zone during that time and put ourselves in the public face. That's certainly how the Friday Feature Artist interview started, was during that time as well. It was like, well,
interesting.
we've got to get people together and we've got to, if someone else is like, other people are doing it, but you know, why not me? Well, I can do it too. So
Yeah, that was a very unique time, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I was invited by the Institute of Modern Art in Brisbane to do a commission for them, um, and I ended up choosing to do the performance lecture called Knowing Fabric, and I kind of devised it like a bit of a cooking show, but for making art, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was really fun. It was really fun and hard work, but
Yeah.
I
It was
am
great.
interested in that like the video medium, photography. I'd already started like working with clothes in sculpture, but I think I just subliminated everything into the sculptural installation work. Like that's where all the bodies are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a, I don't know, maybe it's just safe as well for me. Like there's that distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
definitely I consider those work pretty much all my works. It's the clothes are referencing absent bodies. They're speaking to us.
Mm.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
really do before we're talking about, yeah, that consideration and respect for the material, and that's why I want it to be as precise and careful and considered as possible. And part of that too is, they're thinking of the materials themselves, not only as references for the absent body, but in fact having their own consciousness, their own sentience that I then want to work with. And, there's that materiality. Like I would do that through the materiality. Like that's where I'm listening. I'm listening to how it hangs, how
Mm.
it folds, how it drapes, like how you cut it, all of that, what it
Yeah.
can do, what its potential is.
Yeah. One of the artworks that comes to mind when you're talking about embodying the absent body is the sleepover. You sent me some images of that, and were these old 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're 90s from the like between the 50s and the 70s. I kind of stayed away from the 80s ones because the fabric gets really shiny and I prefer that matte kind of look.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're for people who are listening, this is a body of work that I could describe as a lot of pastel color 90s that are almost look like they're suspended, they're hanging up, but the top half of them are intact and it looks like there could be a body in there, but there's not. And then the bottom half is almost looks like it's coming through a net and the skirts have been shredded. What was this body of work for?
This work, the sleepover, was part of an ongoing project I make called Fantasies. And I started that work in my third year in sculpture, and that was in 2016. And then I finished it first in 2018, and then I added more 90s in 2019. So Fantasies was really about that, like curiosity around other people and desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in effect, with that, with that sculpture, the way it's installed is you can actually walk through those 90s and you walk through the lace hems and they all go over your face.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine.
Like a beautiful kind of sensation. And what it does, literally, when you walk through it, obviously the tendrils are all moving, so it kind of merges all those bodies together a bit as you move through it. So
Yeah.
they really lose their edges, and it does, yeah, it's this sensation of being like, yeah, inside a group and it being all the physical edges of each other's bodies being dissolved.
Mm, yeah. And I love that about fiber art exhibitions, and a lot of fiber art artists encourage people to touch their work. Yeah, that's brilliant that you can do the same in
It is
certain.
quite unique to textiles, isn't it? I suppose you can touch other sculptural mediums like metal and things,
Sometimes,
wood and
but
stuff. But
not often in galleries. Like I went to
no,
one recently and it had signs everywhere saying, please touch the work. I want you to feel it. It was beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's like, I really like that too. I have a sign for the sleepover. It says you're invited to walk through this sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about your Bunnies in Love and Lust and Longing. I just love that little series, and we're going to get to it. But first, I wanted to ask you about the work you did, and it's called For Tim. Talking about, fabric and it's holding memories. Like, was there a moment before that artwork came to be, or that installation came to be, that like deeply affected your creative process?
Yeah, so I think the first time that I really clocked, I already knew that even when I was doing my BFA in fashion design when I was 17 to 19, like what excited me was the craft and the actual making, construction, but also the storytelling, like the potential for, yeah, sort of like working with symbols almost, or references that you could bring things together to kind of tell a story. But then when I went back and did my honors year when I was maybe 20, 21, 22, 23, something like that, my dad had died when I was 21, and I brought in some of his shirts, business shirts and ties, into the studio. And I was doing this project that was looking at the way dolls had been used as these symbolic objects of like comfort or kind of like transformation throughout time. So there are these different examples in where dolls were very like potent. So they would, yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I had his shirts in the studio, and then I saw like one of his hairs on one of the collars, and that was a couple of years after he died. And I think it was really not until then that I clocked the potency, like the emotive, like how much emotion was stored in this garment that was so intimate to him and to everybody's clothes for them.
Yeah. And what was the resulting work?
Oh, I made these like teddies. These like teddies that they sort of they almost had like a doll face. Like they didn't have ears or anything, but they had paws and feet. And so it had his like checkered shirts, but then the matching tie, like a red silk with a print or something, was on the paws and the feet, the soles of the feet. Yeah, so I made these bears, and they had like, the teddy joints and everything. Yeah.
I can only imagine what that would have felt like. Yeah, seeing a hair of somebody. I still own some of my nan's clothes, and every now and then I'll just have a little sniff. And some of them were like her favorite dresses, and they still smell a little bit like mothballs because she used to, at that era, she used to put mothballs in her.
100%. A lot of the 90s that I use for the sleepover, and that whole project is all 90s fantasies. Yeah, they still smell like that perfume my grandma would wear, like 4-7-1-11 or something. That one you used to be able to get at the chemist. Yeah. And the other thing that I really like in terms of staining, like that's a smell stain, I guess, but is a few of the 90s would have these very faint traces of like period stains. And I knew that they were that because they were in the exact place, at the back. And I think probably almost every woman has had that experience at some time in her life. I haven't done a survey on this, but I'm just, imagining. And there's something so like,
it's very human,
vulnerable about that, or like,
vulnerable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating because there's deep topics and things that some viewers may find uncomfortable about that. But to you, it's important to share that and to share that vulnerability in your work, through your work.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's important. I think it's more like that that's who I am. That's where I'm at. Like, I don't have another level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It would be really, it's really, yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's an autistic thing, I think. It's like
Yeah.
The ability to conceal or like construct a canny narrative is not in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. It just.
And I think that things like that are actually entry points into the work. So it's like a way of sharing more, like letting people more into the artwork, and that's real. And I'm very interested. It's very important to me that what I make is open to people, you know, all people, not people that have studied fine art, because I think that as an industry, like contemporary art can feel quite cold and inaccessible and off-putting. And I don't rate that. Like, I think it should be for everyone. I think it is for everyone. Like, anyone who's got hands can make, or not even you know, you people paint with their mouths, whatever. Like, everyone's capable of experiencing life in that way. And I don't like it to feel elitist. So that's part of using clothing, maybe even, is that we all have a understanding of that in our day-to-day life.
Have you ever had any of your work be censored, and if not, like, how do you feel about artwork being censored in this day and age? And I'm referencing in the States recently, there was an exhibition, and it was a traveling exhibition, and 2 quilts were taken out of it because they referenced abortion, and one could have been, you know, it looked almost vaginal in its composition, and they were taken out. And the exhibiting body, the people that were exhibiting it, said, well, if you're not going to show these 2 works, then we're pulling the whole exhibition. And I think from what I've heard, it was, well, that decision was well supported. What would be your thoughts on that? And have you ever had any of your work be censored in that way?
No, I never have. I think mine is abstract, more abstract.
Yeah, these were quite abstract too. Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen that. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Happening.
It may be that culturally in Australia we're a little bit more open and liberal about things.
No, I mean, there have been examples of censorship in Australian art, you know, very recently. Yeah, I think it speaks to the values of the people in power. That's all. I mean,
that's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I think it's wrong and everything, but yeah, that's what it shows, the values of the people who are in power. That's all I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Quilts, they've been a big part of your life and your practice. It seems you've got a beautiful one behind you there. What do they mean? It's gorgeous. Yeah.
I got it in America. I got it at the, what's it called? There's like a really big vintage market, and I got it there in 2019. Yeah, cost about $30 US, but then it was $100 to ship it back, and it was worth every penny.
Where there's a way, where there's a will, there's a way. I know I've shipped many things back from overseas because it was just too perfect.
I think it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. What do quilts mean to you, and do you have any special memories about quilting from your childhood?
I don't actually from my childhood. I actually have curtains. I have really special curtains from my childhood that were in the room when I came back from the hospital when I was born. And they were in the room again when I was 14. and then they were these great curtains that had stripes on a cream, like a clotted cream background, and then they had stripes, but then in between the stripes they had big illustrations of flowers and like these big open blooms and then little flower borders. Anyway, so I took them down when I was 14 and made them into a box pleated skirt because the stripes were at the front and then the flowers were hidden in the pleats.
Oh, great.
So that's like a really early making thing that it just made, I think that was really the first time that I looked at a material in my daily life and just knew, well, that's that. Anyway, so that's a side story, but yeah, quilts, I just adore quilts. I think it's because they're connected to your bedroom, they're connected to your bed where you sleep, so where you're in dialogue maybe with your subconscious, through dreaming. Also, that's where people are intimate with each other or by themselves. So it's this very like potent place, and the quilt I think is sort of, yeah, can reference that or hold that. Yeah. So before I moved to Melbourne, in the summer of 2013, 2014, I made a quilt from my grandma Peggy's Liberty Tarnalon clothes, which is not a great material because the cotton's so thin, but it's meant that over the years I've just kept patching on top. So it has that kind of great like Japanese boro, I think. Yeah, the way of like tending to it like in real time. So I just do that over the top when they get really thin. But that was really like quilts, they're physically warm, but they're also emotionally comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I still sleep under that to this day.
Is that this one here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that the same one as that's in the background here?
Yeah. That's my sister on the left, Imogen, and me. And the top that Imi's wearing is actually one that I made from the clothes of my grandma as well.
Wow.
So I just unpicked the sleeves. So it's got two different color sleeves, but they're the actual sleeves. And then I made the body of the shirt from that same pattern as the quilt. And that was my first quilt I ever made. So it's a very simple one. And in fact, it's from Calf Fassett, and it's one of his designs for beginners. I think it's called like the wallpaper strips quilt or something. So if you think about like old buildings and you going back and like scraping off the wallpaper. Yeah, and I really liked that. And so some of the fabrics I have, and like that's my mum's nightie in the middle, the purpley one. Yeah. And then in fact, the one that I'm wearing as a pinafore in the top left is another old curtain. So there was some, and yeah, you can't see it, but I did put the other floral curtain in too.
How old were you when you made this quilt?
26.
Really?
So
Wow.
that's the curtain that I made the box pleated skirt from, just to the left of Imi's head, where you can see that open flower.
Yes. Yeah. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I love looking back at, I'm showing two older photos here, and then one which was taken more recently, and it may just be the photograph or the screen grab, but the colors have quite faded, and it just looks so well loved.
You're really faded, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, I've used it for 10 years,
Yeah.
And those, you can see those blooms. That's the box pleated skirt. Not the skirt. I didn't cut that up. I've actually kept that, but that's that fabric too. So I can remember Peggy wearing those clothes, and those offcuts of the lilac from Mum's nightie. And I think even the pattern of her nightie was her mum's, because it was a 50s pattern with like the yoke at the top and then the coming off it gathered. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, it sounds like you had a beautiful relationship with your grandma, and she really fostered that love of making in you and doing it for the pleasure rather than the perfectionism of it.
Well, she was actually very practical. So she grew up during the Depression on a farm in Victoria. So I think it was it was a thrift-based thing as well for her. Um, yeah, like it was the way of living that was affordable to do her own making, and she made like my dad's flares and everything in the 70s. Yeah,
Yeah.
but mum also she made my dolls' clothes, and they had these. It was once again, it must have been her mum's pattern or something, but had these beautiful Peter Pan collars with the little Velcro with the buttons, and then the dungarees, and there was a gathered skirt that she made a matching skirt for me to the doll, and my doll
Yeah.
was called Dolly Wally. Yeah, so I think I guess that's been part of it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. Let's talk about bunnies in love, lust, and longing. You recently exhibited these at the Melbourne Art Fair, and they did very well, and you sold loads of them. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So this series transforms secondhand leather gloves into intimate and emotive sculptures. And you mentioned before that, you know, some make you cry and some make you laugh. And what drew you to using gloves for these series?
It actually came about in a very straightforward way. I did a workshop in just a half day one in 2014, 2015 when I was in second year uni. I'm doing sculpture, and the artist had made these human figures, and she said she was sort of teaching us the foundation of that, and she said bring along some gloves to use for these people's clothing. And she was teaching this, I suppose it's a very basic thing, but like to make a wire armature.
Yep.
So using that as an internal structure to then pad around, and then you would do the clothing. And then she had made resin feet and resin hands and faces for her figures. But so I took this workshop. I brought some gloves, and in fact, they were cotton gloves that I had, but they were what I realized. I made this sort of figure that was like bending over, but I put the gloves on it, but I didn't cut them and make them little clothes. I decided that it had ears because this is like two hands and two ears,
Yes.
and then the other half is like two legs, and then one you get rid of, and then you've got a tail. So it came about very naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to show a couple of images here. Um, I'm showing what looks like three pairs of red leather gloves, and bunnies are doing an acrobatic move in a circle, and it's quite joyous. This one here, and I see joy in it anyway.
Yeah, so that one, all that I call that the loopers. So they're the looping ones. There's maybe four sets of them, and there's another one, and they when I started making, at first the bunnies were sort of single figures, but then um, they obviously, when you've got more than one figure in a work, it becomes relational. So it becomes about how they are physically engaged and connecting with each other. So that's
Yeah.
what I was able to do with those works. And yeah, you can see the bunny on the left in this image is made from driving gloves. So they've got little holes for the knuckles and little cutouts. And what I did for another bunny, one of the sleepy ones, was because it had little holes on its back, and that's a sleepy one there. But this sleepy one with the driving gloves, I ended up making it a set of fairy wings and putting them through the holes in the back of where the shoulder blades were. And so I made those little wings from the finger pads. Yeah, so that sort of went like that, and then they could. Yeah, it was very cute.
Yeah, yeah.
Always, that's part of my way of listening to the materials and what's possible with them, you know.
Yeah. So is it that the gloves, like, what's your process with it? You would be gifted or shop for or find some leather gloves. You come into your studio, and you spoke a little bit, almost like channeling, like you're in solitude and you start working. Do you start with a plan for how these things are going to work, or a bit of an idea, or is it very much the glove tells you what it wants to do, or your mood at the time?
Yeah, it's everything. You can't really split it up. It's like everything that you've said. I just took some pictures off the wall because I'm changing, I'm moving on. But like sometimes I'll do little drawings.
Yes.
See that one bunny lying down and then the other one's coming over and giving it a kiss.
Yes. Yeah.
Or like it's bending over and looking through its legs.
Yeah.
Or
Cute.
they're holding up, two of them are holding up the other one, and that's got the little fairy wings. But yeah, so I do sometimes when I was like in the flow with it, I could think about boom, 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 different ideas, because I'd realize some other possibility of the way they could connect. So then that would spark other ideas. But definitely I'm always like, it's always focused by the actual material, because it might be the color or the scale. Like some of the men's gloves I made into these group of 4. They're called big men, and they're really funny. They're like and stuff. And yeah, it's from the
power poses.
or like they think they're great, So they it's very much about
having a scratch.
Thinking through what's there, what's in front of me, and the colors as well can really give you a sense, like a feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I love these ones here that are in a massive group. So the watches, so they look like very tall gloves, and they've got pearl buttons down the middle, which almost sort of brings the like a cape almost together, doesn't it? Like a jacket, like the buttons of the jacket. And one thing I noticed with your work, and particularly your bunnies, because I've been able to get up close to them, is that it looks like they've always been there. Like you can hardly see your intervention, if that makes sense. So there's not a lot of visible stitching, or like I'm almost looking at it going, well, yeah, they're just meant to be like that because they are.
That's so cool that you say that. Because yeah, that's really I actually think of that as one of like quite a particular way that I work, in that I want it to feel like this object always existed in this way.
Yeah, it certainly does. I get that sense. Yeah, it's lovely. And the personalities, and I would imagine in your other work that it would just allow the work to speak for itself. Like you're not looking at it going, oh, that's how they did it. Because you're not taken there.
Yeah, it sort of goes beyond that. But also I think that's kind of, that's the like maybe one of the hooks, or the curiosity or the surprise is like, wait a minute, like I kind of know what that is, but it's different. So I think something happens there.
Yeah. Before we move on to your kinetic sculptures, because I just can't wait to share these with people. They're just beautiful how they dance. I wanted to just touch base with you on working with a gallery and pricing. So you recently sold a lot of the bunnies and things like that, and I'm sure that there was many people wanting more. How has worked working with a gallery helped you with, like, say, pricing of your work or promotion of your work?
Well, they do that. That's their job. So they'll
Yeah.
price them. We'll talk about it, of course. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe that comes over time, that an artist has a handle on their prices, but certainly I think they're more qualified to do that job than I am.
Yeah.
But,
Do you think that they've pushed you to have prices a little bit higher than what you would do if you were doing it solo?
oh, it's like chalk and cheese. Like, I wouldn't even be in that context of an art fair without working with a commercial gallery. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like it's just a completely different game, I think.
Yeah.
I
For
know there are really successful artists that do work by themselves, but I really, really appreciate having that relationship with my gallery, and it just works really well for me. It works really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. For context for people, looking at your Bunnies in Love and Lust, and there's still a few available, and you mentioned that, you know, you're starting to take those drawings and that working off your walls because you're moving on. If someone was wanting to purchase a bunny, what's the price range that people can expect? And I can pop up a link in the show notes as well of your gallery, which is, how do you say it? Tolano?
Polano. Yeah.
Tolano Galleries. Yeah, so they're based in, is it Collins Street in Melbourne, or in Melbourne?
Exhibition Street in the city. Yeah.
Exhibition Street in Melbourne. So Tolano. I don't know why I can't say that, but anyway.
Polano, just like that. Yeah. Just how it looks.
Just how it looks. Yeah, so price range and, yeah, what can people expect?
Well, the best way to deal with that is to get in contact with the gallery and ask for a price list, and then they will, be able to send a catalogue, and that's kind of the way it works with buying artwork from galleries. Yeah. So
Yeah.
their email will be on their website.
So Hannah, it's so great that you can work with a gallery and work with them with your pricing, and they can help in so many different ways to promote you and get opportunities as well. For those listening that may not be with a gallery, what advice would you give them in terms of starting to price their work?
I would say, like, first of all, you need to do research and you need knowledge, you need information. So I would be looking at, is there anyone else in my country making work that has similarities to what I'm doing, and what are their prices? So I guess it's like market research. So you're looking at what things are going for that are equivalent in some way to what you're doing, and
Yeah.
then you could use that as a gauge. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
obviously you want to, it's about the experience, the level that your practice is at. All of this plays into it, and also maybe running it past people that you trust as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good idea. Someone once told me, put a price on it and then up it so you feel slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. That's I kind of like that, but it's a strange one because you're putting a fiscal value on your making,
Mm,
and that's really difficult
yeah.
because it's not coming from, it's not a product, like it's not, so I think
Yeah.
it's a really different way of thinking about what you make and how it's valuable in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And often that number isn't relevant to how meaningful it is. or how many hours you've put in or anything like that.
It's so true.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
So
so true.
maybe being able to have some distance from it as well, and know, yeah, know that that number isn't reflective of the value of your work in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You can't use it as like a way to feel good or bad about what you do. I don't think that's gonna be conducive to well-being. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really sound advice. Yeah. Thank you, Hannah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just before we move on to your kinetic sculptures, which I can't wait to share, just you mentioned that sort of the bunnies were coming off the wall now and that your work was moving on. How do you know when a series has, and I describe it as like leaving your body. So you've kind of been in it, and like, do you think that do you always go back? Will you go back to the bunnies? Will you go?
100%. I will
Yeah.
go back. I already have some gloves that I collected. It's more like that chapter's closed for now. And then, there are ideas that I haven't made. Like, so I definitely feel like I already even started that series in the first one I made at the workshop in 2015. And then I showed them the first iteration 2018-19. So that has always been like a work, like it will come back up to the surface,
Yeah.
when it's the right time for happening next. Yeah. But what I'm doing now is the reason I know it's time to move on is because I have a deadline. So I need to make a couple of things in the next few months for a couple of shows. So
Yeah.
that's just once again very straightforward, really.
Yeah. The
And
practicalities.
it'll just help me. It'll help me in the space to not have them on the wall, like to just physically take them down will reorient what I'm thinking about, where I'm focused. Yeah.
Where are your next couple of shows? Where can people see them?
I'm in a group show. I have work in a group show called The Veil, which is at Buxton Contemporary, which is a gallery that is across the road from the NGV International. And that is a show curated by Hannah Presley, and she's brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. And I'm making a sculpture out of all these sequin dresses. They're behind me, actually. They're behind the camera. I'll show you.
Okay, we get a sneak peek.
I'm just staring at them.
Wow.
They're like all old clothes, and yeah, it's the next there's about like 30 pieces behind me, but that's also a continuation. So that is a project that I made for Tulano in 2023 that was called This Body is Experiencing Pleasure, and the whole show was made from sequin dresses, like ones that people wear out at night. Yeah,
as you're talking about this, I'm going to pop up some images of this show because it's very different to other things that you've done in the past. So sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, it is different. So that one's called Waiting. The work's called Waiting, and it's got all these sleeves in it. And in fact, this show is the first time I've done this, but I actually wrote a short story, which is called Francis the Moth, and it's on my website under texts. And I used that short story as a way of then kind of materializing like aspects of the story. So it's about this woman, Frances, being very lonely, walking past, leaving the train station, seeing moths under the street light, and then walking past this wire fence, going home, taking this pair of scissors belong, and that's the fence is the work in the middle, and then the street light with the moths is on the right, and in that image. Anyway, so she cuts up this tablecloth with these magic scissors and puts it on as a cloak, as a cape, and then the cape falls to the ground and she flies out the window as a moth. And she kind of, it's that, I wanted to describe that feeling of, that imagination of being outside of a physical body, being in an animal body where you are part of a collective and there's no like sense of, I think the sense of difference would be different. Like for her, for in the story, for her, it's about, yeah, being outside of this female human form and all that comes along with that, and just being part of this group.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that kind of body of work describes. But then in this work for Buxton, this is part of her story of her journey of coming back down to earth. So that show was like, one of the works is called Party in the Sky, and it's that kind of all of these merging.
Yeah.
And then this is coming back down.
And this is fascinating. So like, just so people understand, this exhibition and this big body of work started from a story, and you wrote a story about Frances, and then she metamorphosizes into a moth and she flies up.
Yeah, and she realizes when she's in the sky that a lot of the other moths are also ex-women.
Yeah. Awesome. And so they have a conference, and now she's decided.
No, they have a party. They're like having sex.
They're having a party.
Having a good time. Yeah.
They're having a party in the sky, and now in this next exhibition that's coming up at Buxton Contemporary, she's come back down.
Yeah. It's a really great show because all the artists get to show bodies of work. So I'm showing works, maybe 5 different pieces. So the new work that I'm making is going to be like about coming back down.
Yeah. Beautiful.
In some ways, anyway. I haven't made it yet, so I can't tell you exactly.
Well, I'm just around the corner, so I can definitely pop in and see it. Definitely. And I just wanted to make a comment too on this gallery space where all the works are black and white, although there are some sort of skin color, flesh color, sequined ones in it as well, and some gold. But the floor of the gallery is like a polished black, and there's white walls. And so when you're looking at that image that I'm looking at now, Hannah's work is on the white walls, but then there's this beautiful reflection on this black, shiny surface. So it's almost like you're getting, I don't know, it's almost like it's water. Was that a consideration when creating this body of work, or was that just kind of like this happy accident when you saw it hung?
Well, the floor's always like that, so they always reflect everything.
Yeah.
But it was more that the sequins are because it's a bit of a celebration, and this kind of nighttime thing. They're a material that it looks a bit trashy, but I think it's really brilliant, and that trashiness is kind of, it's like the flip side of sacred. But with the floor, I guess I definitely, I'm a sculptor and installation artist, so I'm always sensitive to what's happening spatially. And I'm trying to look back and remember, but I love that floor. Everyone loves that floor. It's amazing. It's brilliant. So, I think I probably had a sense that it would work. This show would work in that space, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Where
But
is that?
really, like, it's about the work. It's not, yeah.
Yeah. Where was that space, out of interest?
Oh, so that is Tulano in the
Oh,
city. Yeah, on
oh, wow.
Exhibition Street. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great. Awesome.
So that
Yeah.
was my first major commercial show. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thanks.
Um, I would love now to show people a video of your kinetic sculptures. And this one is from a body of work called Forest Summons. And I'm going to play a video. So for those watching or listening on the podcast, it has some beautiful, and I'm assuming it's violin or viola violin soundtrack to it. And it's just stunning. So if you can imagine swirling, dancing fabric spinning around. It's all very green. There's also some fabric from the top of the gallery that's suspended.
Yeah, I call that the canopy.
The canopy.
And that's
Yeah.
all in silk organza, and I got them dyed. Yeah, I got that fabric dyed.
Yeah. And just so before we look at it, the spinning of the is it the trees? Is it the roots? Like, what was your vision with that?
Yeah, definitely the trees and the roots. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I sort of think of it as a forest ballroom if the trees were dancers.
Amazing. Okay, a forest ballroom. That's what we're thinking about if you're listening or if you're viewing this video. So I'll just play it now. Hannah, that is so beautiful, and it makes me sad almost to watch that. It's just so beautiful. Yeah. How do you feel when you look back at that?
I can't believe how gorgeous it is.
Yeah. It's just
Like, you
one of the
almost
most.
forget. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's actually a real achievement, that work.
Yeah. Yeah. The soundtrack to it as well gives you
That's
tingles.
my friend Sky McNichol in Brisbane.
Mm.
She's obviously classically trained violinist, but really experimental, and she has this ability to pour emotion into her playing. Yeah, so I have all these ideas for how to extend that work. Actually, hopefully one day can do it. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
like to, I work sometimes with a poet as well called Autumn Royal, and I always work with Sky. And I think that through that sound and these words, so Autumn has done poems for my fantasy show. But what happens is it allows these other ways in, these other ways of speaking to the ideas. Well, you
Yeah.
know, my language is like moving textiles, but you know, the sound gives you this other way to access what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it is quite a sad work, in fact, looking at that video because, you know, um, trees are like felled. It happens a lot in Tasmania, I think, with the forests. And yeah, like there is all this kind of knowledge and beauty and other ways of thinking about life that, yeah, don't fit into capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What drew you to kinetic sculpture and movement in textile art?
Well, I think a very straightforward answer is probably from my working in costume making
Yeah.
and doing that for 4 years through Queensland Ballet. And then also part of what I did for them was dress dancers side of stage. So I spent a lot of time watching shows from the side. Um, and the way that fabric is the way fabric sort of participates in that context is like on the dancer's body as a costume, and then also as a like set dressing or the props. So it's a really important there's this thing that happens between the dancer's movement and then how that affects the material.
Mm.
And that is really, that's like got me hooked. I'm hooked on that. I think that's really interesting because the material goes so far in conveying the tone and the mood of the story in
Yeah.
terms of like seduction or fury or um, like magic. I feel, yeah, it does a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had that knowledge already. I had that interest for many years. I think I could, before I was fortunate to be invited to be in the show Primavera, where I got to do my first lot of kinetic sculptures.
Mhm.
And they took me a year to make. Like, they weren't, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, they were completely new. So that was a really interesting and important time in the studio. Yeah.
Yeah. We showed some of them moving in our introduction slideshow, but
Mm,
here's also
mm.
some other images.
So
And
that
I
the
sorry.
green one at the front, that spiral, that is what informed the next series, the kinetic.
Yes.
So yeah, each of the sculptures they're named. So that the Forest Summons is for Lilith, but the one before this one, that is for these sculptures are made in homage to these 5 feral, interesting women or people who kind of like co-opted or worked out a way of living that kind of like transgressed or co-opted the feminine conditions of their time.
Mhm.
And yeah, just very like quite, yeah, powerful. And I just found that really interesting. Actually, that's what I wanted to say. You asked about how I kind of and I've got to tell you, if you go back to that sculpture, Sarah, this one actually, see all those, it looks sort of like fringing.
Yes.
Those are silk tassels that I took off a piano shawl from the 1900s. that was given to me when I was maybe 17 from a family friend's mother, and someone gave it to her, and it was still in its box from, the King of England and the Queen,
Wow.
from Liberties of London. So that was crazy, and it still had the ribbon and everything, but I kept that for 15 years, almost 20 years, and then took the tassels off and put them on this sculpture. And it's also made from silk mourning dresses, as in MOURN,
Yeah. Yeah.
from the 1920s, one that I was gifted many years ago as well, and then a silk evening dress from about the 1990s. But what kind of hooked me right at the start with making this project that was, obviously I already had that knowledge, like what fabric, I knew there was so much potential for fabric with movement, but then in terms of thinking about clothing and its relationship to people and its potency, I read a couple of articles around that time, and this was right when Brittany Higgins was expressing what had happened to her in Parliament, and that was kind of coming up. So I felt really angry about that, and that's the highest level of governance in Australia, that building. Anyway, so there was that. Then there was these articles I was reading that were like, women in mining companies are being told to be careful of what they wear because that's leading to sexual harassment. And then another one where it was like, this man had punched this woman, and it was like, sorry, I feel like I should be giving a trigger warning, but I forgot. But anyway, this assault had happened, and he had sort of like blamed it on what she was wearing and that she looked like a slut or something.
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, as someone who, it just felt, obviously that's absurd, like to give more power to a inanimate object than your own choices and what you have done as a perpetrator. But I do believe in the power of clothing, so I sort of thought it was like insane, but I took it as a proposition. Okay, well, in my sculptures, the clothes are pissed that they're being blamed for this stuff, and they're sort of fighting back.
Yeah. Wow. That makes, just knowing that it makes you look at them in a whole different way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you put in your artist statement or in your didactic panels within the gallery, or is it?
No, I think I wrote it. I think I said it in an interview that they have on the website for that show, and I think, I told the catalogue writer, Hannah Fink, and she wrote. I think it's in the essay.
Yeah, it's in the essay. Yeah.
But
I don't
also,
want to.
like, the work needs to exist and be able to be understood without words as well. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to be making things that need to be propped up.
that's very important, what you just said. I don't want to make work that needs to be backed up by the words. Yeah, they need to stand for themselves.
But
Yeah.
it needs to be itself. Yeah, it's itself
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, words are great. Like,
Yeah. I don't want to trivialize what we've just been speaking about, but you mentioned, disassembling the vintage garments from the Queen.
but you know how in England it'll be like by order of or whatever, like their favorite marmalade or whatever will have that little crest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was like that.
It was like that. Yes. Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but yeah.
Do you ever get any kickback from, I don't know, vintage clothes collectors? Like, how could you do that to the clothes?
Nah,
You
I
don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, how could you cut them off or something? But
there's a greater purpose for them?
If they come to me, they know what they're in for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. If the clothes make it to you and they come to you, they know what they're in for.
Yeah, like I just can't answer that, you know. I don't know how to answer it. And
I don't actually want you to think about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to be in your studio even thinking about it, because how you transform them is beautiful. And I often think, you know, we have probably a lot of garments that are sitting in boxes that will never see the light of day again, and yet you're giving them a new life.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have not seen one piano shawl. I've seen a few piano shawls of that period with the same like gold through the black silk with the floral and stuff. But yeah, I'd probably have to spend 10 grand 5 to 10 grand if I wanted to buy that of that period again. But the sculpture's like worth more than that. Also, I don't know, things just come around. Like, it's made there, yeah, it's here, it's my material. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. Do it.
I don't know. I don't know how to
Yeah. Yeah.
think
It's
about.
so
It's not like about the money, it's about the effect, you know? Like, that sculpture needed that feeling of well, being when it's down, it's very still, but then those tassels help it fly out and go beyond its edge, sort of like it sort of, rather than it just finishing really hard with the black fabric, it kind of gives it like a way of petering out slowly.
Yeah. It's just beautiful. I encourage people. You've got those videos, I'm sure, on your website.
Yeah, they're
And
under the artworks, under the different names of the artworks.
yeah. I just want to mention too, while we're talking about your website, that it's the most fascinating and well organized and easy to navigate website that I've probably come across. It's just
nice,
a delight. Congratulations on being so organized with, you know, all your awards, all your exhibitions, all your bodies of work. I really encourage people to jump on there and have a look. And if you're an aspiring artist, an emerging artist, I would say that Hannah's website is best practice. Go on there, have a look. It's just great. It showcases who you are, what you do, and there's beautiful images on there. So well done for keeping that up to date. It is just purely www.hannahgartside.com. So easy for everyone to go and have a look. And Hannah's Instagram is Hannah Gartside Studio. So that's the handle as well. So please, I do say it at the end of the video as well, the end of the podcast, for everyone to go and have a look and give you a like and a follow and follow your journey. Hannah, you have been so generous with your time. I've just got a couple of last little questions, because you actually got a scholarship to go and do your Masters in Fine Art overseas. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where you hope to be headed and how that journey is unfolding for you?
It's been my goal and plan to do an MFA overseas for the last like 4 or 5 years. I've thought I want to do that. That's next, I reckon. So then finally I didn't have any jobs. Like, it's the time to go. I knew it was sort of, this is the time. So I applied. I didn't think I'd get it, but I did apply for the SAMSTAG scholarship for international visual art study. I think that's what it's called. And it's from the University of South Australia, and they give one to an artist from South Australia, and then one or two to artists from the rest of Australia, from anywhere in Australia. And then, yeah, so I was very, very, very fortunate to get one of the 3 of those last year. And so I've been applying for courses, and I'm not sure where I'm going to end up yet, but I'm thinking maybe Amsterdam will be there, yeah, at Sandberg Institute. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm
fantastic.
still in that process of applying and interviews and things.
Yeah. Well, good luck. You
Thank
mentioned
you.
to me at one point, you said, I'm really like, as I was asking you about, oh, wow, imagine the work that you're going to create in, while you're doing that. And you actually said to me, actually, no, Ange, it's not about the work that I'm going to create. And I don't even want to be resolving pieces during the MFA. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, if you remember that conversation?
Yeah, what I meant, what I'm looking forward to is not having to have things resolved into public outcomes that are ready to be shown, and being able to, it is about the making, like that's what I am really excited about, how things are going to change and grow. But what I meant was, I will be able to make a lot of questions in the making, have a lot of questions without having to finalize the outcome for a particular time, in a particular timeline. Yeah, for then it being making sense in a public context as a finished work. Yeah. So it's sort of like, I'm looking forward to it being a dialogue that's more private, but also has that feedback level with other students and teachers with doing crits and toots and stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be different because it's been a lot of public outcomes like the last years, which is great. Like that's what you want as an artist too, like to share the work. But this will be a different, slightly different.
Yeah. And who knows, some of the questions that are asked and maybe answered, but maybe not, they might spark, and I love that word that you use, that word spark, ideas that might sustain your art practice for the next decade or two from this time, this focused time that you're giving yourself. So
yeah, it gives that opportunity to kind of have them, like I obviously know where I'm going to start. I already have these hunches, but it means that then when I'm going back and I'm having these conversations with curators about what are you working on or what's going on for you, it's like you've got them in your mind already, and it's sort of like, well, that one I'm going to drop in now. Do you know what I mean? But you need to have them all for when the conversations are happening to be able to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do understand that. Hannah, you were recently asked to speak at VCA, where you studied to the first year students that were there, the visual arts students, which was, would have been fantastic. If we had people listening to this today and watching that are emerging fibre or mixed media artists or visual artist sculptors, what sort of advice would you give them, and what sort of advice do you wish you had have been given early on?
Okay, I'll answer the first bit first. I would say, if you've been given the idea, know and trust that you are capable of doing it. So I think that's really nice, to sort of that self-belief and determination. If the idea has come to you, then you are capable of realizing it in the world. And two, the other one was, what was the other question?
What piece of advice do you wish you had been given early on?
I wish I had been told to keep a Excel spreadsheet document of every work I'd made as it was finished, and the title, the measurements, the materials, where it was stored, or if it was bought, who sold it, like how much money it cost to make, how many hours. Like I think that I'm building that now, that record of basically like an archive of all your works. And even like where the images are from that work or that show. So I think that's really, really, really important.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of retroactively doing that.
Yeah, the paperwork. That's where you need to get your brother-in-law to help you, because he loves a good spreadsheet. Being the accountant that you spoke about earlier.
Loves it.
Yeah, he would love that. Yeah.
He wouldn't love it because it's too hard. I have to do it because it's like, where is that? I've got a storage unit. I've got the studio. Some things are at the gallery. Some things nothing's really at home, but yeah, there's a few places. So people
Yeah.
ask me to borrow things for shows, and then I have to remember where they are and
Yeah.
all
Wow.
the
There's,
details.
there's a lot of logistics that you take for granted as the viewer.
Yeah,
So
there's
much
so
going on
much that goes
behind the scenes.
into to putting on a show like that. And I was sitting in a meeting the other day at Buxton for that show, and I was there to like look at the space for my work, but I was just listening into this where they talked about everyone else's, and there's just so many everything has had time considered and spent on what is going to be right, like every little detail. Yeah,
Mm,
it's a real thing.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We tend to ask at the end of our interviews a quick section, and we call it Every Artist Must. It's basically just 5 questions and with a word at the end of it, and you're just asked to answer in the most honest way that you can. And I know that you're super honest, and I love that about you, Hannah. Shall we go for it?
Yeah, give it a go.
All right. Every artist must dare.
To dream. You have to go beyond like what's possible now and think about what's possible beyond your walls and self-limits.
Every artist must navigate.
Self-doubt, like coming to terms with the anxiety of having parts of yourself on display in public.
Yeah, for public critique. And valuing it. I always say it's one of the most bravest things you can be as a human being, as an artist, because you're putting your insides on the outside for everyone to
Oh,
judge.
it's such a privilege, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
to get that, to be able to do this.
yeah. Every artist must remember.
I don't know the answer to that. To love or something, like to be.
Remember to
Can
keep
also
good spreadsheets, good documentation.
yeah, to get images of your workshop.
Yeah. Every artist must believe.
Yeah, in your conviction, in your yeah.
Yeah. And every artist must own.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't know.
Mm.
Journal.
Mm.
It's good to write things down, draw things out, keep them
Yeah.
for later. I would say
Yeah.
journal, but that could be like your notes app, you know. For me, it's physical, but everyone's different. But yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes like, yeah, it takes years for a piece to be made. But the idea might have come a long time ago, and then you have to wait for all the other conditions to be in place. So you kind of need, I keep a record of all my ideas.
I love that, how you said that before, how you just have to wait for the opportunity to come, and then you draw from it and it drops down. And I had this visual of, all these ideas floating, and then you just like plucked them and went, that's the one. You're ready.
100%. It feels a bit like that. I'm like, oh, maybe now it's time. Like, I can bring out the big guns. Here we go.
Exactly. Well, Hannah, I can't wait to keep following your journey. You seem so young, and I know that you probably don't consider yourself so young, but you're so experienced. But I can just tell that you've got so much to give the fiber art world, and look out, Sheila Hicks, because Hannah Gartside's on her way, and yeah, I just can't wait to see where you take this.
Thank
So
you so much. No,
yeah,
it's been
thank you.
lovely to chat, and I wish
Yeah.
everyone all the best with their making, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, keep making. I'm going to play a little exit slideshow now. Hang on the line and we'll say a quick goodbye afterwards. And yeah, once again, follow Hannah on Instagram and her website. All the links will be in the show notes and we'll pop it in the comments for those on YouTube and Facebook. So thanks again, Hannah.
Thank you.